Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome back to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are excited to have our guest, Josh Mullins, on. Josh is the managing director and founder of Automized. Josh's company helps automate and optimize business processes while using intelligent automation technologies. So we have two exciting episodes planned with Josh. And on this first one, we're going to be talking about optimizing our business processes and also how companies find business tools that help them accomplish their goals more efficiently. So thank you, Josh. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you.
Awesome. So we hear the word thrown around loosely, optimize and efficiency, improvements, automation, all these types of words that people like to use loosely. But in your mind, when you talk about optimizing a business process, what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, business process optimization or efficiency and like all those kinds of buzzwords that you typically hear if you read some kind of business book or whatever that may be. Like to really complicate it. And really for us, we boil it down to sitting with the person doing the process and looking at where they're spending most of the time within that process. So commonly for us, we're looking at areas where businesses, when they scale up, they're overloaded and their people can't really handle that workload and they feel like they need to hire, or when they scale down, they feel like they have too many people. So we have to try to find the processes that result in those kind of feelings within a business and then focus in there on how we can actually go through and create some resilience and scalability within that certain process.
Awesome. Yeah, you mentioned find out where they're spending most of their time. So what I like about that is it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad place to spend their time, but you want to understand maybe where the biggest gains can be had, right?
Yeah, definitely. For business process optimization, we're a consulting firm that does a lot with technologies, and we could easily come in and kind of give the tactics and tools that someone should use, but ultimately we find it works best and drives the most kind of return on investment from a standpoint of your time and energy and like money spent on tooling if we focus on the process first and then kind of wrap the best technologies around it.
Okay, so what does that look like? Do you do some kind of an interview or a survey or a questionnaire that you start with and then work from there?
Yeah, so a very common example is within invoice processing. So we'll go down and kind of sit side by side with the person who's doing the invoice processing process and kind of say, okay, how long does it take you to go and get the invoices that you need? Are they on paper? Are they coming through an email? What does that look like? And say, okay, that takes 5 minutes. And then you need to open up your accounting software. And then maybe you're typing each line from that invoice in and then saying, okay, matching it to your like accounting codes and things like that. Then we start to get a really good picture of, okay, for each invoice, it might take you 5 or 6 minutes. And realistically, that doesn't need to be the case anymore because of some tools and technologies that are out there. Or we can work with you to kind of understand, yeah, we can go to the supplier portal and download that file format that needs to be imported with little effort from your end.
Okay, so what are some of the things that you use to measure and say, okay, I think we've achieved everything we can in this particular area. Now let's move on to something different.
Yeah, so kind of when we first go into a company, your biggest opportunities are going to be where you have repetitive and really transactional kind of processes that are well-defined. I know well-defined can be scary within a lot of companies, but really what I mean by that is somebody knows when to make a decision or how to perform that task. We do some work with what's called robotic process automation, which is just software. But you can really think of it as like if you had to train a robot how to do this task, could you? So to actually track and see if like you've kind of fully squeezed out the opportunity within your processes, what I like to do is kind of identify, okay, within finance accounting, here's our like 10 areas of opportunity. I then say, okay, based on the time and like estimated like energy to actually optimize those, did we accomplish that? Or, sometimes a process may need to be optimized, but it's not worth the time and energy being spent on the optimization effort for you to actually go and do that work. And it's better to move on into a different area within your business, like HR or project management or supply chain, whatever that may look like.
Okay, so do you normally have a point person that you work with to help impart this wisdom to, so that when you're done with your engagement, that they're sort of overseeing that process within the team?
Yeah, really the work we do, it's more of change management. So we have to, when we go into a company, whether it's a smaller company and we're working with the president or business owner, or a larger one and we're working with the C-suite, really who's driving the like adoption of the change processes or new technologies and things is going to be that leadership team and casting vision for why it's better. Nobody likes change. Most people would rather just kind of sit, especially myself, kind of do what they're doing normally. So kind of casting vision for what this is going to allow you to do is so important. And really that comes out to the leadership on like really casting a clear vision for why it's being done and addressing the concern that most people have sometimes around, is this going to like take my job away? Is it going to be different afterwards? Really, I hope the difference after a company like ours comes in, or if you're doing this internally yourself, is that your team feels the free and able to take vacation without having to bring their laptop, and they can really unplug, or they can go spend more times with their families or be in their communities, things like that.
Yeah, those are great ways to measure, if you've really done something meaningful that's compelling for someone to continue to do, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what are some common processes that you see companies doing backwards? Like if I'm making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, me personally, I always put the peanut butter on first, right? I don't know that I've ever seen anybody put the jelly on first and then try and put peanut butter on top of that. So do you see processes like that seem to be just kind of backwards and pretty common in different companies?
Yeah, I would say from like a process standpoint, there's 1,000 ways to like do a process, and the best way is really kind of subjective to like the actual company and what they're doing. I will say like a common example of like a really time consuming process, or one that just with today's tooling doesn't make sense, is, and this is related to WorkMax around just like using paper time cards. The common example of somebody's writing down their time on a piece of paper, and then another person's typing that into an Excel spreadsheet maybe, and then another person's entering that same data into their payroll software. The amount of time within that process should be spent on serving your customers, building up your team, or kind of those higher value projects that necessarily aren't being like addressed because a lot of time is being spent on those tasks.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you mentioned software tools, and you're saying a lot of times these are, when you talk about automation, you've got some kind of a software product. Where does integration and interoperability between multiple systems come into play in a lot of the work?
Yeah, definitely. So the common problem that's like ubiquitous at our clients that we work with is the fact that their systems don't talk to each other. So somebody somewhere within the organization or company is spending time typing in the same data multiple times in different systems. And from a automation standpoint, or even just pure integration, really what we're solving, and you can solve with some of the tools that are out there today, is reducing the time spent typing the same data over. I always say humans weren't meant to be robots, so let's create jobs and opportunities for them not to be. And a great way to do that is to tie in your systems together. There's several ways that we'll have to go deeper into around like how you choose systems and things so they do connected to each other. But really, I would say focusing on like how we can make our systems talk is going to drive the immediate value that you're looking for.
Yeah. So when you're doing this and going through these exercises with companies, how commonly do you feel like cultural things get in the way of this, or maybe just old habits? The old dog, new trick thing. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, the I guess classic saying that aligns with that is like, don't fix what's not broke. I would counter that with technology and like systems and software, and is moving so fast. It's overwhelming sometimes. And if your business isn't focused on kind of preparing for what like a digital future looks like, not fixing what's not broke will work now, but it's not going to work long term. And the companies that are preparing today to support those kind of new technologies and things that are coming on are going to be the winners. And really, from a cultural perspective, the best way to support that is really to drive the concept of being a lifelong learner and staying curious and looking for ways to continually drive efficiencies.
That's awesome. I always wonder, and I think this is the big thing that most companies, as business owners and entrepreneurs, are trained to do. They want to understand the cost benefit. So, what does the ROI look like by doing some of these things? Do you have some common metrics that you use, or ways that you help show people what value they might gain by putting some of these things in place?
Yeah, that's going to be another classic. It depends on the size of the company and what they're doing today. I would say we break it out into two buckets though. So you can either drive savings from somebody's time. So now you're in a position where you don't have to hire somebody else. They have increased capacity that scales. They can focus on higher value tasks. And we kind of tie that back to the manual effort that we're saving them through technology. And then there's the other area, which is increasing production or capacity, or really that kind of top line revenue. And those projects are really driven by, for example, if you're at like a contractor, like being able to go and get more leads in a day, which it's becomes that game of numbers. If you can kind of play it that way of, okay, if we can get 100 more leads and this month and we have this closing ratio, okay, we can kind of estimate here's going to be a return that way. So I'd say when you're focusing on projects, I would align it to one of those two areas of either time and kind of manual effort savings, which, necessarily isn't always realized from a standpoint of like you're getting that cost directly off your profit and loss statement. But it does prevent you maybe from hiring somebody in the future or keeping around an A player on your team because they're not overworked. Or you can put it in the bucket of that kind of revenue growth and how we can drive more numbers from like the top line standpoint.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Very informative. So when you're talking about some of these tools, are there any tools that are free, maybe low hanging fruit that somebody can easily implement to get started and to recognize, man, there's a lot better way to do some of these things?
Yeah, I would say, and I'll break it into three categories. The first is going to be kind of like the digital workflow automation kind of side of things. So if you're a Microsoft user, if you use Outlook and things like that for your company, Power Automate is included kind of at a base level. And there's so many connectors and things that you can do within there that will allow you to connect your systems or kind of automate some workflows at a very basic level. And there's tons of people on YouTube that have created videos on training. If you don't use Microsoft, recommend checking out Make or Zapier, which are kind of the equivalent to those. But both of those, I believe, have kind of a base level tier that you need to pay for. And then as far as like other tooling, I would say, a big area is those paper-based processes. The data that's on that sheet of paper is becoming more and more valuable within your business and is oftentimes lost or not entered correctly because it's on paper. So using something like a low-code app builder, one is called Power Apps, which is also at a base level is included in your Microsoft subscription. And the other is going to be called Glide, which is, if you're not that great at computers, I would really say that's going to be an awesome tool for you. Is drag and drop. You'll be able to do exactly what you need there. It'll be a really familiar experience with some of the other things that you might have used on the internet before. And then lastly, I would say if you're focused on marketing or sales or just content generation, things like that, you may have seen in the news like ChatGPT. I'm a huge proponent of this tool. It's going to allow you to go through and create kind of that first draft quality content that you need, and then you can take it from there and really adapt it for your business. That's going to save you a lot of time and allow you to like really kind of be a thought leader within your industry, just by typing and conversing with a robot, basically.
Yeah, and one thing that I like that you did in breaking out those three segments, it sounds to me like there's a lot of utility for all types of people in different roles within the organization. This isn't just, okay, this is for the tech nerds, in the back office that are, dealing with the servers. I mean, this could be anybody, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The best way to describe it, I hope you're not in a position of being like frustrated with your role or kind of feeling that robotic nature. But if you are, like, these tools are for you. The barrier to entry is no longer you had to go study computer science somewhere. It's just going on YouTube and spending maybe an hour on learning, okay, I have this problem. How can I use one of these tools to help solve it?
Yeah, it's great. You brought up YouTube, and you mentioned earlier being a lifelong learner, being curious. And I have learned and learned and learned and relearned all the time that, before I even ask, people within my organization that might be very technical and super smart, but they're busy. It's hard to get them, to interrupt them in the middle of, writing code or doing something that I don't want to disrupt them from. I could just YouTube, or Google things that, I could get 20 smart responses from people that are just putting information out there for free. And I don't need to ask anybody. And I can very efficiently learn and understand how to solve a challenge or problem without having to interrupt anyone.
Exactly. Yeah. We're in this really fun and exciting time from my perspective of like the individual like employee within a company. It's not to your point of like the IT team or developers. You can have ownership in like kind of solving those problems using technologies that are out there built for a user like you.
Yeah. And I think most people know, if they're replacing a water heater in their home or, changing out the power steering belt on their car. I mean, yeah, YouTube's great for all of that kind of stuff too, but as far as business processes and tools that they can use in their day-to-day work life, those answers are also out there. So I love your recommendation to remain curious and to continue to try and learn, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So as far as your overall perspective, we know technology continues to advance. We know, you mentioned Chat GPT. Of course, everybody's probably seen that in the news. If you've had the pleasure or the opportunity to utilize it a little bit, it is truly amazing what it can do to speed up getting your ideas summarized and formatted in a way that sounds smart, sounds like it was intelligently and thoughtfully put together, and you can fine tune and tweak those things to make them more yours. But yeah, as far as saving you 30 extra minutes for typing a very long email, it's a really pretty cool tool.
Yeah, definitely.
So as far as your experience in the industry and with the clients that you've served over the course of your career to date, what is something that's been surprising to you as far as innovation and adoption of some of these things?
Yeah, I would say the biggest surprise for me has just been like the pace of tooling that has come out to support smaller and like medium-sized companies. Early on, like when I started Automized, like which wasn't that long ago, a lot of the tools were very geared towards these giant, massive companies, and those were really your adopters of technologies like these because you had to hire really expensive developers or things like that to really drive the projects. It's been really fun, and like the reason I really started Automized was to support these small, medium-sized companies and see the kind of tools that are now out there to support them. One from a standpoint of ease of use and like maintenance, they're a lot better for companies of this size, but also the costs align a lot better versus like the enterprise tools, which are significant licensing fees that don't necessarily drive the return that you should have within that company.
Yeah, and for the listeners, are there certain industries that you work with more exclusively or that you focus on primarily?
Yeah, so really our focus is on trade-based industries. So we have a concentration, I would say, within like roofing contractors, but we continue to kind of work outside of that. Those are our kind of favorite clients to work with.
Yeah, I love that. It's an industry that we serve often and we love as well. We love the trades. We love our general contractors, heavy highway, bridge builders, all of the very different and unique disciplines within the construction industry. But it's awesome that you're getting in and helping those blue collar guys that really are doing great work, but they maybe leave something to be desired on the back end process of things in the office.
Yeah, really the goal and intent is like for those people who have started companies and like in that kind of scale up stage of, you know what, you were really great at your trade and now you also want to grow and scale your business. We want to make sure we're supporting those owners with the tools and technologies so they can build a really sustainable and resilient business, and continue to create like really great kind of outputs from that.
Yeah, one approach that we often talk about on the show and have a lot of guests explain in one form or another, but it's all very similar in intent, is, we are all entrepreneurs and business owners, no matter which trade you're in. And yes, you may in your mind be a roofer, but you're really not a roofer. You're a business person who is doing business within the roofing industry. And so we're all business people first, and our trade or discipline happens to be the way that we implement that business. So it's a great reminder for everyone, and I'm sure that's a conversation that you have often with your customers.
Right. Yeah.
So just to wrap up this first episode, is there anything that you feel like we need to cover or that you wanted to slide into the conversation before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just kind of recap that there are tools out there today that are here for you. And there's tons of training and documentation or people that have created courses on how to implement them within your business. I would love if you work with us, but ultimately I want to be able to give you the tools and technologies that are out there already. So highly recommend going through those tools I mentioned, and kind of going back to the point of like, now's the time to start preparing of how you're going to build your business in a way that's sustainable and resilient, that's built kind of on a really strong foundation of tools that are helping with automation or helping with content or getting things off of paper, and into your hands of your people a lot faster.
That's fantastic. So in wrapping up, what would you tell the listeners that you have seen as far as a company's ability to grow or improve things, maybe the next year after you've gone in and helped them? I mean, are there any stories or anything interesting that might resonate with some of the listeners?
Yeah. So at one of the companies we worked with, it was a large roofing contractor. Their service department manager every day would go into their project management tool, export like basically all the tickets for the next day, and then open up Google Maps and then start typing in the addresses for everyone, and then would screenshot the building and then would paste in the Word doc. And this is a pretty sizable company, and the service manager was spending a couple hours every day on this task of creating these work packets so they can then be sent out with their field staff. What we did after and like kind of the work we did was automate that process. So we had a tool that logged into the system, got the Word documents, and then took the screenshots and like sorted everything automatically. And it was really fun to like walk away after and see like the difference. We were able to give this person a couple hours back in their day and now allow them to really focus on coaching and supporting their team and create a little bit more consistency with the documents and things that we're be sending out every day. It also allowed him to like not have to worry about that process. He walks in the morning, he downloads a file and prints it versus worrying about, okay, I have a really tight schedule today and it's going to take me into dinner tonight kind of deal to finish this. So
That's awesome. That's a great use case and a great story. So yeah, just for the listeners, encourage you to look up Josh and his team, and again, hire a coach, hire people that are focused on and specialize in improvement of business processes so that, again, you can plug their templates into the things that you're trying to accomplish and see if there's some efficiencies you can gain, not just more profitability and efficiency, but again, better quality of life, making work-life balance easier and more effective for your staff. And again, we're all building companies here, and the best way to build companies is to build people. And appreciate Josh having you on today and talking about how you're helping do that with our industry, and looking forward to having another conversation and talking further.
Yeah, it was great talking with you, Mike.
Awesome, man. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.